so this is not what it's showing.
Okay, hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Kiss and Tell. And this is Dr. Sabrina Rojek, and today we have an amazing person. I'm super excited. I've got Jessica with me, and Jessica, she is got. You know what? I just assumed and went right into she, and I did not even ask the pronouns. I apologize. Let me ask your pronouns, please.
Well, thank you. I do go by she and her.
Okay, she, her. Great, right? What am I doing here? And Jessica, do you care for folks to have your last name? Is that important for you?
Yeah,
If so,
that's fine.
okay. However you wish, I would like to get this going. Okay. So she is joining us from so many good things. The Center of Wellness. She's been on the sexual teaching, education, uh, professional personalizing pleasure, lots of amazing studies, and one that was actually released in a survey today that you've got. And please tell us more about for those that identify as cisgender women study.
Yeah,
I'm not sure you'll go ahead.
so this study, it's a pilot study, and
Okay.
specifically I'm looking for Black cisgender women. So we're looking at studying the sexual experiences of Black cisgender women, and I believe this survey is up on the banner. And so once you click on the link, it'll give you much more information. There'll be an informed consent there that'll explain to you in good detail, like what I'm looking for, what I'm talking about. But absolutely. So if you are a Black cisgender woman, and by Black, one or both of parents are African American, and by woman meaning cisgender woman, meaning that your biological and your thought process in terms of your gender align, then by all means share it. And if you are not, please share it with someone you know who is.
And thank you so much for the descriptors too of cisgender, all of those bits and pieces. I appreciate that. So Jessica, again, you've been on some of this journey since 2018. Again, you, outside of your own studies and towards your own healing, the Center of Wellness, which we'll get a little bit more into that. There's a practice. You, besides what you're studying with these gender studies, mental health, nutrition, wellness, which I super love that there's an incorporation of the body and all of these things. And let's talk about more about what you do, what you're bringing. What else should we know about you to start, and then we'll get right into it.
All right, so let's start at the beginning.
Yes.
My first role outside of my personal life is being the clinical director here at the Center of Wellness, and so that particular space is a all person space, right? Meaning we're
Mm-hmm.
inclusive and diverse in many different ways, not just from the people that come into our doors, but from the people that are on this particular staff. And so this is a space where everyone feels welcomed, and that we are constantly adapting to the change in ties and norms, and where sex is a very real part of the conversation in terms of the clinical space, the nutrition health that we do, and even our physical wellness that we work on. Secondly, I am also a doctoral student. And so within that space, I am looking to study sexuality in two ways. One of those ways is sexuality within the Black population, but in the other way, I'm focusing on the need for comprehensive and appropriate sex education within the school system to make sure that we're using that as a means of prevention. So those are two major things that I do. And then in my other roles, it's really about promoting appropriate sexual wellness and helping people understand their sexual rights. And so I do that in a number of different ways, by working with sexual assault survivors, by working with domestic violence groups, by teaching my own presentations or at conferences. And so a lot of what I do is education. I want people to have this information so that they can make informed choices, whether they ever choose to go towards sex or not.
Okay. So many good things in there. And you said a little bit, but let me also ask just definition. You said appropriate sexual wellness, and you used that term a couple of times. Will you explain just a little bit what exactly appropriate means?
Yeah, so we get so many misinterpretations and inappropriate definitions. And by that, I mean, for example, I hear a lot of people, specifically, let's say survivors of sexual assault. Quite often, I'll hear things like, I had sex with. my predator or the
Mm.
perpetrator,
Mhm.
right? And so
Mhm.
I might clarify and say, well, that was abuse. Sex
Mm.
requires consent. And so
Mm.
appropriate meaning that we are providing people with the language, the tone, the definitions
Yes.
that when they're speaking, that they're really healing in how they are relaying their messages. And it doesn't just apply to sexual assault, right? I'm also talking about how we talk to children,
Yes.
pocketbooks versus, naming the anatomy appropriately.
Yes. Yes. Oh, so good. Oh my, I can't even emphasize enough. Like you said, the language and tone and what is appropriate, where sometimes, as clinicians, therapists, whatever, how we're demonstrating sometimes to
Yeah,
other people telling us a story. I just did this the other day, saying that made me really sad. I actually want to tear up. I want to cry. And they were, oh, demonstrating that's an appropriate response for that type of thing. Yes. Thank
yeah.
you for explaining that. Fabulous. I love all of this. So tell me a bit, unless there's more we want to get into, tell me a bit more. Then we started to talk about this personalization of personal pleasure, right?
Yeah, so the personalization of pleasure. So that is my baby.
Yeah.
I love when people take their pleasure personally. Is really what I'm saying. That
Okay.
right? So your pleasure is centered around your wants versus your willing tos. And so what I mean by that is that want to is something that makes you genuinely feel good. That
Mm-hmm.
makes you feel warm. It is not for anyone else. So you're being touched or treated or responded
Mm.
to specifically in a way that feels good for you without regard for how the other person might be experiencing it, right? Whereas our
Say
willing
that
to
again for the people in the back.
listen, like our want tos are important. And so many of us don't know how to do that. We do not
Yes.
know how to be in a situation that we are getting our needs met. We are doing something for someone else, and we're okay with that because it's not harmful. But quite often, I ask, all genders, all races, all orientations of people, how do you get your needs met? How do you make
Yes.
sure that you feel good in a situation? And so, yeah, I'm talking about sexual pleasure, but heck, I'm also talking about the food choice you made today,
Anything.
the clothes you're wearing.
Yes. Yes. And then really just people stopping to what do I want? And how some folks you're standing there and they're like a fish with the mouth just like they've got nothing.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't stop to see what feels good, what
Yeah.
sounds good, what do I want now? Okay, yes. So tell me more. Keep going.
So that personal piece are the questions that you're describing right now, right? It's what is it that I like? Okay. And if
Mm,
I'm saying I like it, why do I like it? What
mm,
exactly do I like about it?
mhm,
How is this engaging for me? And it's a sensing sort of experience. And yeah, sensing with your five senses, but also sort of that internal felt sense of what does this create in my body? What kind of
mm,
is it a warmth? Is it a coldness? Is it a mental block to where I want to shut away? So it's really being self-inquisitive of why do I like this? If I like this, what
mm,
exactly do I like about it? And right, the part that I want people to know it's inherently not intuitive. Nobody else knows what you like. I don't care how many times you've done it, right? They don't know what you like. And so that then again, personalizing your pleasure says, okay, I like this particular way.
mhm.
And the other person has a
Yeah.
choice.
We expect the partner to to magically figure us out before we have figured
Hmm.
our own selves out. Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
I like that. And have you come across then what do you do when people have a hard time with that? How do we help folks with that?
Yeah, so I take a couple of different paths to this. One of the ways is we really hammer down on what it means to like something and what it means to feel and experience something. Quite
Mm,
often, especially when I'm working with marginalized groups, whether we're talking about sexually marginalized or again, just like from a larger cultural perspective, they've learned to shut their needs off and numb themselves to them.
yes.
So, quite often, it's turning that back on that you can take up space, that you can have
Mm,
needs, you can have wants.
mm,
And some, again, a lot of the education that I'm providing may have nothing to do with sex. It's helping you get into the mindset of, I am deserving, my needs matter, this is important, and I have the ability to voice that. Other people have choices about whether or not they respond to it. However,
Mhm.
right, I can advocate for myself. And so the first part is helping them identify what the barriers have been and what might have shut them down. And then the second part, right, is once they've come to that realization and they can discuss that, now we talk about, okay, now what's next, right? That's happened to you already. How should we move forward? And sometimes that also means having somatic experiences with them to where you may be asking them, you know, take your hand and rub it across your other hand. Can you actually feel that? Do you actually
Mm,
sense into that? Do you like the way that feels? And if it's a partnered couple, right, having the partner do that and having them say, don't touch me like that, touch me like this.
mm.
There we go.
Oh, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, real quick, you said somatic and you gave an example, but will you just give us that definition real fast for those that might have got stuck there?
Yeah. So the way I see somatic is as an inner body feeling and sensing, right? Somatic just means
Inner
what your
body
body's experiencing.
feeling and sensing.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
What your body is experiencing. That
Mm,
doesn't require mental thought or capacity because our bodies have memories and things
yes.
implanted on it that are, that can be both implicit and explicit without our mind being a part of it.
Yes. Okay. Beautiful. Thank you. So when you are talking about, because asked the question, some of the difficulties that we have and how do we help get past those, and you were saying that there's some somatic involvement. And so now again, will you tie that back together of why is that important that this was an emotional issue? I might have been, sure, somebody might have had some sort of a physical, run in, whether it's domestic, something else. However, we don't hear so much
Mhm.
about somatic therapy, healing, or why that's necessary. How do you bridge those two for folk?
Well, I want to open the lens a little bit when
Okay.
answering the question, right? Because I
Yes.
do think when people think about somaticization, right, meaning the physical body's response, we usually think of domestic violence and sexual assault. However, we could be talking about people who grew up in extremely religious households. We
Yes.
could be talking about, right, people who were gender nonconforming and that wasn't
Yes.
respected growing up, right? So we
Yes.
could be
Thank
talking
you.
about a lot of different things. And so I want to open that. But in
Yes.
terms of like, how do we bridge that? Well, wonderful book by I think it's Dan Siegel. Right, the title of that book tells it all. The body keeps the score, and so
Yes.
even when our minds are not aware, because our brains have done the wonderful job of protecting us from something we've experienced, our body is aware. And so, yeah, I'll treat your mind, but if your body's still reacting, and I'm doing this right
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
part of that is sometimes I get people who literally have visceral reactions to something
Mm.
and may say, "No, I'm fine." Right? And
Yes.
yet we're seeing that incongruency. And so we have to
Yes.
confront that discrepancy of you're mentally okay, but your body is not
Mm.
okay.
Mm. And so then how will that, because a lot of people think, in my experience, think that they can compartmentalize a lot better than they actually do.
Yeah.
So now, when we're tying this together with this personal pleasure experience, having a good feeling experience in the body, different from what, for
Yeah.
however it came about, feeling. Can you tell me, yes, how do we do that? Work with that, the
Yeah.
whole thing.
So the first thing I honestly tell people is your body doesn't lie. We
Yes,
can lie, but your
yes.
body is going to speak tons about what you're experiencing. And so the first part of that is to recognize and respect what your body's saying. If we want to get to
Mm.
personal pleasure, we have to be able to respect and honor our body and help our
Ooh,
body be story. So
can we let that marinate just for a second?
yeah, yeah,
Respect and honor the
respect and honor.
body.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes. I just, some folks I know might struggle with that. And, that is the beginning of the struggle place. So I just want to let that settle in for a second. And then, yes, please keep going.
No, absolutely. I think it's a powerful point. Our bodies. may have been harmed by other people's messages, their thoughts, their feelings, their beliefs. And this is, again, you're walking up the street and somebody said something unkind. You were told that you weren't girly enough growing up, whatever it
Mm,
was, um,
mm-hmm.
that was harmed, right? Allowing yourself to tell yourself and your body that that wasn't okay for you. It was too much or it was too little. And you have the right to be responsive to that. And
Mm,
this part, you have the right to
this. Yes. So I keep, sorry, but
no.
that part is you have the right to be responsive to that. Oh my goodness, right? I, we need to hear that more.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, keep going. I'm sorry again. I'm stopping you
No,
as
I,
you're going, but I just want to make sure with some of this stuff it really is powerful and it seems so basic sometimes and
but it's not.
but it's not, right?
It's not. It's not. It's absolutely not. So you have the right to be responsive to it, but then you have
Mhm.
the right to heal.
Yes. Yes.
We get stuck in
Beautiful.
responding and we forget that we have to heal. We get to move forward. So,
Mm.
I really want people to get that part is that, yeah, we acknowledge, we respond to, and then we restore so that we can create a new narrative for ourselves and for our bodies.
And that's a big part of your current work as well. And in even what was offered at the clinic, and you were talking earlier, telling me a bit about some of these groups too that you all offer. And can you tell a little bit more? That was a perfect segue about that narrative. What does that mean to restory, to have a narratives group? Could
Yeah.
you? Yes.
So one of the things that I think we tend to do when we've had an experience is that we might retell the story, right? We
Mm-hmm.
might repeat that story to somebody.
Yes. Yes.
And usually when we're retelling it, we're just sharing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
We might relive that
Yes.
story,
Yes.
right? So we might tell you that story and be very reactive. We're going to be big and we're going to right be expressive and you're going to see exactly how I felt in that moment in the present moment.
Yes.
So the first,
Absolutely.
right, we're disconnected. The second one,
Yeah.
we are not present, right? And so then we might um, begin to start to rename and restore. And what we want to think about there is now we take control of the narrative.
Mm.
Something happened to me. It
Yes.
wasn't okay.
Yes.
And big giant and my entire body of work is and
Yes.
what comes next?
Inclusive and yes.
Inclusive and um, what's the next part of your story? I didn't,
Mm.
you're not taking away chapters 1, 2, and 3, but now we have to write on
Mm.
purpose,
Mm.
chapters 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah. Okay. So real quick, couple of powerful control the narrative, right? How many times we're hearing, oh, that thing happened and there's nothing I can do about it,
Mhm.
right? And so then that victim, narrative can come in, or blaming, or our internal punisher gets activated, all kind of fun things happen.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and you're saying something then that's contrary, or supportive, or the and of when people get stuck there.
Mhm.
So you can do something positive for yourself with how you relate to the story, right? And then you said, then the writing of the next chapter. Yes, this thing happened.
Mhm.
Now what, right? Like, how are you going to move forward and heal, grow for yourself? What are those next chapters? Intentionally creating those. Um, Such powerful tools to be able to offer someone to help them develop.
Oh, absolutely. And again, like I keep stretching it out, but it's to emphasize like this is also the person who maybe you first started out having sex and it wasn't a good experience. Somebody
Mm,
laughed at you, something didn't work the way you thought it would, you didn't understand how to use a condom. And so after that, sex became uncomfortable. Right.
mhm,
The same thing applies to your body has stored those messages. And so you
mm.
also then need to restore of yes, that did happen. Let's acknowledge it. Let's be
Yes,
responsive to it. Let's deal with let me say this because I think this is an important piece for
say it,
people to get. No
please.
matter their trauma, no matter your experience, at some point we have to stop responding and attending to the trauma, and we have to
Mm.
start attending to what the trauma left behind.
Ooh, say that again, and can you say more?
Yeah,
So good.
right. So we have responding to the trauma, right? Living and reliving what has happened. And then
Mm,
we have responding to being intentional and healing from what the trauma left behind.
mm,
Here's the thing. It already happened.
mm-hmm,
No matter how many times you relive it, it already happened.
mm,
And so now, right, the part that you have to be attentive to if we want to heal is that it left something behind or
mm-hmm.
it took something with it.
Yes.
And that's the part that we need to attend to. And so a lot of people go and they do trauma work and they do sex work and they do all these pieces. But what happens is they keep repeating the trauma. This
Yes.
happened, this happened, this happened. And we're not
Yes.
saying, okay, I understand it happened. Can you tell me the impact of the trauma? Can you tell me
Mm,
how it
big
shaped you?
difference.
Yeah, that's a different question. I don't want to know what happened. I want to know the impact of what happened.
Yes. Yes. I just said big difference. So, what would be some examples of impact,
Mhm.
or how someone would even say that?
Yeah. So let's go with examples, right? So one, it might be I keep getting cheated on. And they
Mm-hmm.
may come and they want to consistently talk about people cheating on them. True,
Yes.
that happened,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
My question was, what was the impact? Oh, I have trouble trusting people. I
Uh-huh.
don't, I'm not comfortable with intimacy.
Yes.
Connecting with people or sitting close to someone is a challenge for me, right? I can
Yes.
this. I can help you with the impact. I can't do anything about the trauma.
Mm, mm, right. There's a certain amount of then ownership or accountability, or, then that is having to happen
Hmm.
to be able to move into that space.
Hmm. And
I've come
yeah,
across those people who just want to retell the story.
yeah,
They
yeah,
don't want to really, look at the care, all of that. So,
yeah, yeah,
what do we do with that?
yeah. Well, I mean, I think the first part is acknowledge that it sucks. Let me say that.
Yes.
I'm the first
What?
to say this. I didn't
Jesus
start this.
Christ.
It wasn't me. I didn't do this to myself. And yet I'm
Yes.
stuck here cleaning up somebody else's mess.
Mm,
You created
mm,
my world. I'm the first to say that sucks. But I'm
yes.
also the person to say, that's true. But you have a couple of choices. Are you going to stand in that place and not move? Because we can move
Mm,
backwards and right, and we can shift and we can be in our depression and we can't go anywhere. We can stand still and again not shift and not go anywhere. We haven't moved, nothing's changed. I'm not depressed and I'm not anxious, but nothing's changed,
mm,
right? I can go too far ahead
right.
and now I'm paranoid. And so really what do? We're attentive to who we are in that particular given moment, what our ability is. So what can we do?
Mm,
What our capacity is, what tools do we
huge.
have around us that will help us do what we need to do, right?
Yes.
And what is our willingness, right? And
Am I a willing participant to
am I
this?
willing
Or is this
partic-
going to just build more resentments or something?
I have
Yes.
voice? Do I have agency,
Mm,
right? And then that fourth part is what is my motivation? What do I believe is going to come as a result of me doing this?
mm, yes. Yes. That's huge. We got a comment real quick here. Somebody coming in saying, hi, Courtney. She's a regular listener. Courtney, of course, if you've got any questions, anybody else, if you've got questions, and as you're listening, while this is going, if you're following and listening live, or even afterwards, please feel free to send in your questions. And if there's any specifically for Jessica as well, then, we're happy to pass those along. Jessica, this is so good. You've given us and dropped so many bits and pieces already and things to chew on. If someone is wanting to begin to engage in any of this work, anything you've talked about, but especially if we're saying this personal pleasure idea, like that just makes my ears tingle. It sounds wonderful. Um, what is there some tips, tricks that we could say, or tools or steps for folk to take them through, or even a wrap up of, oh, this, that we can give kind of in an easy,
Yeah. I
digestible
mean,
way?
so the first one, right, I would say is agency.
Mm,
You know, recognize that you have sexual agency. And if you're in a position where you don't have choice, right, considering
mm-hmm,
whether or not you have choice will make a big difference. So if you ask yourself, do I have sexual agency over my body, over
mm,
my interaction with a partner or partners, and you
yes.
can't answer yes, then right, we have to make some changes because your ability to engage in pleasure and your ability to have healthy experiences, healthy sexual experiences as well is important. So the first part is finding out and checking in with, have you been using, are you aware of, and do you understand your own sexual agency, right? So do you have knowledge about yourself, your body, your needs, your wants? And then the next part is to begin to get curious with yourself. Explore through journaling. Well, what do I like? And how do I know I like it? What was the last time that I had a pleasurable experience? And honestly,
Mm,
I would encourage you all to go
I like
broad
that.
and funnel down. Pleasurable, let's go broad. What felt good for you? What was the
Mm,
thing that you noticed was pleasurable? And then maybe work your way down to sex. But let's start identifying and finding out where you exist on the pleasure spectrum in general, and so that you know where you have to go. So journaling is a great way to do it. Maybe talk to some friends or some trusted people. Ask them, how do you, what do you consider pleasurable? How does pleasure show up for you? And you're not trying to take tips from them, but you're engaging in healthy conversation and engaging in non-harmful conversation that might help you create
mm,
some ideas and advocate, right, for yourself. And then
yes.
lastly, curious with your own body. So we can talk to ourselves
Mm,
all day,
I like
right?
that one.
But be curious with your body. I'm all about and support, different types of masturbatory touch. And so whether you're doing it for pleasure, whether you're doing it for orgasm, whether you're doing it for exploration or curiosity, it's your body. Get personal with it. Like this, you
Imagine
should
that.
know if this feels good for you or if touching your clitoris feels good for you. Like you need to know.
Yes. 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 So, real quick recaps, and I love this. Thank you, beautiful stuffs here. Agency,
Mhm.
sexual agency, choice, um, knowing what the self wants and needs, and your body, being curious to explore. That's really good ways to do that through journaling and lots of ways, but journaling is a great way. And asking the question of what is, or writing down what are pleasurable experiences, that you've had, maybe asking friends, and getting ideas that way. And that also then is fostering healthy communication around sexuality, and without feeling weird and all kind of other
Yeah.
things that people sometimes get to feeling. Um, and curious with your own body. Yes,
Mhm.
I love all of this.
Yeah.
These are so good. We're coming already to time unless you want to keep going. I want to be respectful of yours, but we also then give the option if there's more that you want to chat about. Otherwise, we're coming to time. Um, but I want to make sure we know how to get in touch with you, and then we can get to any questions and things. I've got
Yeah.
some things. I've got one of them put across the bottom here on your Instagram. I'll add a couple of the other ways. What's the best way for folks so they can also hear it and see it to get in touch with you for services, questions, what have you?
Yeah. So one of the best ways, well, let me say a couple of. So the first one is
Yes,
if
please.
you're interested in following like what I'm doing, where I'm going to be, what am I going to be talking about, and
Yeah.
maybe tips that I might have, then definitely find me on Instagram at the Sex Professor. That's one of the places where I'm always mentioning what's happening next with me, and so that you can stay up to date on that information.
And
If
Jessica
you're
Ross, I didn't say your last name
Jessica,
earlier at all. So I just, if folks are trying to find you and having any difficulties.
yep, ROSS. I often get confused with Roth, so ROSS.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah, so that's one of the ways to get in contact. The office has an Instagram, and that one is at which is THEE, Center of Wellness. That's another way to kind of follow what I might be doing clinically. And then if you're interested in maybe finding help or support, you can always reach me at office at thecenterofwellness.org. And that's another way to get in contact with me and to get messages to me or to get questions answered. I try to be as accessible as I can be. I'm not great with checking DMs, but
Hey,
I will
you got to
respond.
let them know.
Yeah,
That's okay.
yeah.
Um,
I'll check
yeah,
emails.
beautiful. And I also then, again, you were, just so we can make sure we get to them, there were a few groups that you had mentioned. Please tell us a little bit more about those.
Yeah, so a couple of groups coming up. So here at the clinic, we have a couple groups coming up. We have one that's coming up. It'll likely be mid October, and that's going to be specifically for children and teens, excuse me, and that'll be around coping skills that you can find on the website, and that'll
Okay.
be posted on our social media.
Okay.
The
Children and teens.
teens specifically, I said
Okay.
children. We're really looking somewhere between like that. I believe it's like 11 to 14 or 15 age group that we'll have groups for. And that'll be specific around like coping skills, support, and helping them integrate back and transition because that's a transition space for them, usually from like
Yeah.
middle school, high school. So
Real quick, because I'm interested, is that an in-person situation? Are these online or is it both?
we
How
have
does,
in person and virtual. I think the one that's coming up will be an in person one. We already had our virtual one. And
okay,
so try to go back and forth to catch everybody as far as
beautiful.
we can. Yeah. So
Love
just
that.
have to kind of stay tuned for those. The other group that we have is ran by Devin Keys here at the office. That one is going to be a special interest group. And so that'll be specifically for Black women. And so that's anyone who identifies as or who self identifies as a woman, but specifically Black. And that's going to be a narrative therapy group. And basically, what that means is that she's going to help people explore and heal through retelling their
Yes,
stories, right? And
yes.
connecting that to culture and spirituality and sexuality and relationships. And so that one, I believe, is coming up October 8th, and registration may have gone live, may still be live, I think, today or tomorrow for that particular group. You can find that on social media as well. It'll be up on our website probably later today.
Black cisgendered women, real quick, and that's a group starting October 8th. There you can register. That's at the on the website, the centerofwellness.org.
And that one's not cisgender women. That's
Oh,
anyone who self-identifies as woman.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Paul. Thank you so much. So anyone who self-identifies as woman,
Yes.
that sounds fabulous, wonderful. A group to come together with others, and anytime we get to do that and support each other is lovely.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Was there a third one you said?
Yeah, the last one I'll mention. So some of the work I do is with the Sasha Center, and they are a sexual assault and advocacy center, specifically working with the African American community around sexual assault. And so I am working with them to facilitate a group in October as well. I believe that starts October 13th, and it'll
Okay.
run for about 8 weeks. And that group it's called. That one is posted on my social media, and that one's called "Let's Talk About Sex, Baby." And that
Oh,
one,
I love it.
right? That's a play on words. But that
Yep.
one specifically be for like again sexual healing after sexual assault, with the
Mm,
focus on pleasure and how do you re-engage your body in experiencing pleasure. So all of that will be posted on social media, and again on the websites for people who are interested.
that I'm like, all of your work and everything, it's important, but that one in particular, with the Sasha work on healing and engaging with
Yeah.
self-pleasure, healing after sexual assault within, our communities, and particularly within the Black communities, and knowing what that looks like. The statistics are ridiculous, in a bad way.
Mhm.
So much thank yous and gratitude for being a part of that and offering such, I mean, our folks aren't getting this type of help and healing. Like, we're, lower on the totem pole as far as who's accessing these types
Yeah.
of things. So
Oh
again,
yeah.
thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with, Jessica? You've already given us so much
Yeah.
knowledge, and again, just sharing of what you're learning as you go. So thank you for that, because
Yeah.
as you
So
heal, we heal. Uh, what have you got? What's your final thought, maybe?
yeah, you know what? I'll say this: pleasure on purpose. The thing that I promote is that your pleasure should be on purpose.
Mm,
It's important that no matter what we're talking about, that you are intentional in how you engage in taking care of yourself. Pleasure is just as much self-care as going to get a hair, your hair done, or a manicure or a massage. Sex is an integral part of interaction, and sex isn't just intercourse. It's a part of your whole center of being and understanding and interacting and relating. So listen, my last word to you all is have pleasure on purpose.
I love that. Have pleasure on purpose. You heard it here at Kiss and Tell, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again, Jessica, for joining us. Again, the work that you're doing in the world. Follow her, find her, subscribe, and keep up with what she's doing. Same thing with us. Share this. And again, if you've got any questions, what do you want us to talk about? You're kissing, we're telling. So let's talk about it. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you all next time. Take good care.